Hello, here we go. My name is Huynh, and I am a young future. I'm from San Diego, California, in the United States, and I'm currently a graduate student at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography, studying marine biology and conservation. I consider myself a young future because it's my first time dipping my toes into small-scale fishing. My parents are Vietnamese refugees. They fled the country when they were 11 and 12 years old. They escaped on fishing boats meant to hold 12 people, and there were at least 40 refugees packed in the fishing storage. My parents shared so many stories about how they almost died crossing the ocean to America, and it always shocked me because my memory of the ocean with them are so different. I remember my parents smiling and waving as I played in the ocean waves. I remember holding their hands as I dug my feet into the sand as a child. And I remember them cheering me on as I reeled in my first mackerel half my body size. It always amazed me how my parents could take the ocean, something so powerful that almost killed them, and reshape it into something beautiful for the next generation. I'm hopeful that fishers, researchers, policymakers, and youth around the world can keep transforming fear into joy, uncertainty into possibility, and challenge into resilience. My research is trying to understand the seascape of youth and small-scale fishing communities, looking at opportunities, barriers, and what works. Please come find me because I want to hear your voice, young and experienced. Together, we can create hopeful futures for the generations still learning how to read the tides. My name is Huynh, and I'm a young future. Thank you.
Tough act to follow. I gave that speech at the 5th Small Scale Fisheries World Congress this past year in April in Huynh, Thailand. Bringing together over 300 people from over 50 different countries, this year's themes were just harmony, young futures, and regenerative wisdom. My capstone focuses specifically on the young futures component. It asks, who will fish, and who gets to decide what the future looks like? As a first-timer, I didn't just attend, I volunteered, and somehow became one of the Congress's tech officers. And with my flashy new blue uniform, I was ready to step into the world of small-scale fisheries. I'm gonna get really personal for a second. I don't know if anyone understands how hard it is to be Vietnamese in marine biology and conservation. I know that every fish that I see and try to save, would taste so good with fish sauce or nước mắm. I could drink nước mắm like water. If you can tell, I'm a big foodie. I love a local and fresh meal. I'd like you to think about your favorite family-run restaurant. Not the fanciest place, not the place with the largest marketing budget, but the place where recipes have been passed down, where the owners know the regulars by name, where each bite carries a story. My personal favorite was an Afghan restaurant, where the moment my family walked in, we were greeted with a big hearty, you're back. I'll get started with the usual. Now, your favorite family-run restaurant closes, not because the food was bad, not because people stopped loving it, but because rent went up. Costs became impossible, and the next generation was never taught the recipes. Suddenly, it's replaced with another fast food franchise. And when that happens, we lose something much more than our favorite comfort meal. We lose a third space to connect with our friends and families outside of our homes. We lose culture that cannot be replaced by corporations. We lose the ability to keep our money in our communities. We lose connection to people, places, food that took generations to build. This is one way of understanding what's happening in a lot of small-scale fisheries right now. So youth are not leaving because they do not care. Many are looking at the future being inherited to them and asking if it's too unstable or not. So youth engagement is not just about getting youth interested, but it's about making sure that there is something viable, respectful, and meaningful for youth to step into. So how did I fill this gap? First, I made 2 zines, one for the small-scale fisheries guidelines and one for the curriculum. Second, I went to the World Small-Scale Fisheries Congress, where I partnered with Coast to Coast Movement, and we conducted surveys and interviews. Third, using that data, I created a Youth Futures workshop toolkit called What's the Catch? This past year, I worked with Emmy Cook. She is a co-founder of Coast to Coast Movement, an organization that uses ocean education, storytelling, and experiential learning to support youth and coastal communities. Now, the Food and Agriculture Organization's small-scale fisheries guidelines are important because they address issues like food security, gender equity, and human rights. Funded by the United Nations, Coast to Coast Movement helped translate the core themes of this very technical document into educational tools for small-scale fisheries around the world, called the Small-Scale Fisheries Curriculum. The curriculum is filled with amazing activities to teach communities about advocacy, agency, leadership, and so much more. My part of the project was to take this a step further and introduce both the guidelines and the curriculum to different audiences. Using illustrations from Daniela de los Rios, collaboration with Wadsworth Creative Studios, and feedback from my capstone committee, Micah, Emmy, and Tariq, we created 2 zine prototypes. A zine is basically the smaller, independent cousin of a magazine. Smaller, scrappier, and more community-based. One of them introduces the small-scale fisheries guidelines for government and institutional actors. It uses more data and more facts. The other introduces the small-scale fisheries curriculum that uses more visuals and less data for educators and local community. The point was not to explain everything. The point was to create an entry point, a first step, something small enough to hold, simple enough to begin with, and visual enough to invite conversation. And when I handed people the zines, they asked me about how they could bring these ideas back to their communities, especially the curriculum. And I told them, hint, the QR code on the back. And at the conference, I was even able to hand out my zines to Lena, who literally wrote the SSF guidelines, and she gave me positive feedback. These interactions and the genuine excitement told me that my zines were doing exactly as they were supposed to. They were the doorway to more conversation. After distributing the zines, we asked people to fill out a survey that I created, looking at small-scale fisheries and youth futures. This is important because many institutions may care about youth, but youth engagement didn't become a priority until recently. To my knowledge, my survey is the first attempt to collect data on the seascape of youth and small-scale fisheries. Unfortunately, not a lot of people filled out the survey. Midway through the conference, I had 11 responses and needed at least 30. So I did something I thought I'd never have to do. I abused my privilege. Before a conference session the next day, I wore my blue volunteer shirt with my laptop displaying this. When people walk by, I would say, "Excuse me, could you help me out with something, please?" Seeing a young volunteer in distress, people would say, "Oh, of course, what do you need?" Hi, I'm Nathan. I'm the person who uploaded all the presentations for the conference. Remember me? I uploaded yours. Well, my survey looks at small-scale fisheries and young futures. It'd be really helpful if you could fill out my 5-minute survey. I'd really like to graduate. And boom, hook, line, sinker, we got them. 34 responses from practitioners, advocates, storytellers, policymakers, government people, and so many more roles. Let's see what people said. So this one quote sums it up pretty well for the challenges, and yes, this is their numbered list word for word. They are not a paid actor. We had poverty, those who dream bigger, lack of natural resources, anthropogenic activities, limited resource management, limited voice in management, and skepticism, lack of traditional experience. For many young people, small-scale fisheries may appear as economic stress or obligation, but not necessarily a space for advocacy, science, or storytelling. So the question is not just how do we get youth interested? It is what would make fisheries feel stable, respected, and possible. And looking at opportunities, we found a few different core themes. Make SSF attractive as a profession, spaces to be heard, social media in classes, capacity for leadership, analytical and public speaking skills. So our responses repeatedly name the need for youth platforms, leadership, participation in management, and spaces where young people are actually heard. Lastly, when we asked people what worked, they came up with a few different responses like knowledge, regenerative stewardship, ownership, opportunities to apply those skills in the real world, social media, research with elders. Youth need systems that consistently, this is the key, that offer dignity, voice, stability, mentorship, and visible futures. The big takeaway is that youth are not walking away from small-scale fisheries because they do not care. Many of them are looking at the futures that are being handed to them and asking honestly whether there's space for them in it or not. A young person may love their community and still decide that small-scale fishing is not a future that they can afford. If youth can see fisheries as a place where they can lead, innovate, build livelihoods, and respond to climate change, then staying connected becomes a choice with possibility. Using responses I collected from the survey, I transformed them into a toolkit called What's the Catch? Youth Futures Workshop. It's designed for a conference of global educators held in Lima, Peru this October. This toolkit is designed to create strategies and pathways for anyone to support youth futures in any industry, including small-scale fisheries, agriculture, education. It starts with a memory and place, moves into community relationships, reframes issues, and then turns those conversations into youth-centered strategies and a 30-day action plan. The structure of the toolkit is meant to be a living document that can be applied to larger NGOs and institutions. The long-term hope is that the youth accountability portion over here becomes integrated into all projects to include youth and not just represent them. So to bring this back to where I started, small-scale fisheries are a lot like that family-run restaurant. They hold recipes, relationships, memories, and care that took generations to build. But when the next generation cannot afford to step in or does not see a place for themselves in the story, something much bigger than a job disappears. My capstone became a way to sit with this. Through the zines, the survey, and the workshop toolkit, I try to create entry points, small ways for people to begin talking about youth futures with more honesty, more accountability, and more imagination. If we want young people to stay connected to fisheries, food systems, and the waters that sustain them, then adults, together with youth, have to build futures that are actually worth inheriting. Not by convincing youth to care, but by creating systems, stories, and opportunities to show youth that they already matter. The overwhelming message I learned from this past year is that there's an abundance of love and hope for our communities and our oceans. Let's use that to protect our fisheries and our futures. That is the catch. I would like to thank my family, friends, capstone committee, Team Coconut from Thailand, and yeah, thank you. I'd love to answer any questions. Thank you, paid actors. Hit me. Yes. Oh, with the microphone, please.
I have an unfair knowledge advantage about Vin, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Can you just talk really briefly about how your experience overseas while undergraduate with a Senegalese fisherman influenced your thinking?
Yeah, that's a throwback. So in college, I actually worked on a presentation for a capstone in college about Senegalese fishers, which is really interesting. And I think that really sparked my interest, was getting to know people and stories. Because when I was abroad in Spain, I lived with a Senegalese family, and getting to know them and their kids and their just how much care they took in taking care of me made me want to learn more about who they were. And that sort of sparked my interest in small-scale fisheries, because once I started to do more research about Senegal, I learned about small-scale fisheries, and I think that's what sparked my love for it. These are people with stories, not just an economic tool or anything like that. Thank you, good question. Not all at once, please.
Nathan, it seems like your journey into small-scale fisheries is sort of just getting started. What's around the corner for you?
Right around the corner, I have therapy on Thursday. But after that, I am actually applying for a Fulbright grant, a Fulbright scholarship to work with Coast to Coast Movement in Lobitos, Peru, to continue this work. So that is what I would like to do next. If anyone has a job, let me know. How many small-scale fisheries on the coast of California? Yeah, there are some. I am not sure the exact number of that, but yeah, there are small-scale fisheries in California.
All right, thanks, Nathan.